Welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're looking at a company called Graphwise and their mission to make data AI ready. We've got two of their presentations to dig into today. One's kind of their general overview and the other's focused on their Microsoft 365 solution.
You know what really jumps out at me here is Graphwise isn't just pushing software. They're actually trying to tackle a really fundamental challenge in the AI world.
Okay, I'm listening.
So their research shows that almost half of business leaders who are deep into AI projects are struggling to prove that those projects are actually worth the investment.
Yeah, that's a pretty big number, right? Sounds like there's a gap between what AI promises and what actually happens when companies try to use it.
You hit the nail on the head. And Graphwise thinks the problem is that a lot of companies just don't have connected, contextualized data.
Right.
They say, without that solid foundation, you're basically building your AI on sand, which obviously means it's not going to be as effective and you're not going to see that ROI.
So it's not just about having data, it's about having data that's organized and presented in a way that AI can understand and use, right?
Exactly. That's what they mean by AI ready. And, to get there, Graphwise really stresses something that's often overlooked in AI development:
Oh, what's that?
integrating domain expertise with data science. They have this really interesting puzzle analogy to explain it.
I love a good analogy.
You need both pieces of the puzzle. You need the data science, like algorithms and the technical stuff, but you also need that real-world domain-specific knowledge of whatever field or industry you're applying the AI to.
Okay, that makes total sense. Like if you're building an AI to analyze, say, medical data, you'd obviously need doctors involved, not just data scientists.
Precisely. Without both, you risk ending up with AI models that are technically impressive, but don't actually work in the real world. And that can lead to all sorts of problems, even, biased or harmful outcomes. So Graphwise is all about building AI models that are trustworthy.
Got it. But, okay, how do they actually do that? What does Graphwise do to make data AI ready?
So they have this sophisticated platform with a multi-layered architecture.
Okay.
The first layer is the multimodal enterprise data layer. Think of it like a giant vacuum cleaner, sucking up all your data from everywhere: your CRM, marketing platforms, financial databases, even unstructured data like emails and documents.
Right, so bringing all the pieces of the data puzzle together, no matter where they are.
You got it. Then comes the consistent semantic metadata layer, and this is where the magic happens. This layer standardizes and contextualizes all that data, making it AI ready. It's like they're translating your data from a bunch of different languages into a single universal language that AI can understand.
So instead of just throwing raw data at the AI, they're making sure the AI can actually make sense of it.
Yes. Then, to make things even smarter, they have the enterprise knowledge graph layer. This is where they connect all the dots. Imagine a giant web that links all your data points based on their relationships and meanings.
Interesting.
This allows for some pretty advanced AI applications like personalized recommendations, predictive analytics, and even natural language understanding.
Wow, so it's not just organizing data, it's almost like building a structure that can understand and reason about information.
That's a great way to put it. And that leads us to the final layer, the AI applications and LLM layer. This is where all that work leads to building intelligent applications. They use large language models and other AI tools to do complex tasks, make predictions, and give up with new insights.
It sounds like they're building an entire ecosystem for AI, not just getting data ready for it.
Absolutely. And, they're very focused on accuracy and reliability. They have this really cool example of how their AI can actually use inference to extract insights that wouldn't be obvious to a regular data analysis tool.
Oh, I'd love to hear that.
Imagine a company report that mentions a certain ISO standard related to environmental management. Now, the report might not say anything about environmental risks directly, but Graphwise's AI can figure that out based on the context and what it knows about the relationship between that standard and environmental issues.
So it's teaching AI to read between the lines and connect the dots, just like a human expert would.
Exactly. And this ability to infer meaning is really important for building AI systems that are not just powerful, but also trustworthy and reliable. It's about moving beyond simple pattern recognition to actually understanding what the information means.
All of this is sounding incredibly promising. What are the actual benefits of this kind of AI platform? What does it really do for businesses?
Well, Graphwise says their platform enhances AI performance by making the data more understandable and actionable. They also highlight personalized searches and recommendations as a key advantage, so people can quickly find the information they need and uncover relevant insights.
Yeah, I think we've all experienced the frustration of searching for a specific file or trying to piece together information from different places. It's a huge time waster.
Right. And then there's the potential for intelligent applications like virtual assistants that can answer questions, automate tasks, and even provide personalized insights based on your role. Imagine having a virtual assistant that instantly pulls up everything you need to make a decision, write a report, or prep for a meeting.
Okay, now that's taking things to a whole new level. But, we hear a lot about AI making stuff up or generating inaccurate information. Is that something Graphwise addresses?
They absolutely do. This is where grounding AI in real-world knowledge and logic is key. By connecting AI to a knowledge graph that reflects the complexity of the real world, they're aiming to avoid those so-called hallucinations, where AI spits out something that sounds right but is actually wrong.
That's reassuring because the last thing we need is AI spreading misinformation.
And it's not just theory, there's evidence that this approach works. Graphwise cites a survey of 382 executives who are looking at using GraphRag, graph-based reasoning and action retrieval systems.
GraphRag. Okay, that's a mouthful. What exactly is that?
It's basically using knowledge graphs to power AI systems that can reason about information, draw conclusions, and suggest actions, kind of like a human expert would.
So it's not just finding information, it's understanding what it means and using that to make intelligent decisions.
You got it. And the results are pretty interesting. Nearly half of the executives in that survey said they expect big benefits from adopting GraphRag, including getting more actionable data, quicker insights, and better decision-making.
So there's some real-world validation for this approach. Graphwise isn't just a theoretical concept. People are seeing actual value from it. What kinds of products do they offer?
They've got a whole ecosystem.
Okay.
There's a data suite for managing and preparing data for AI, a content suite for organizing and using knowledge within companies, and a separate AI platform for building and using intelligent applications.
So they have the tools, the tech, and the vision. But do they have any real-world examples of how this works for companies?
Lots. They highlight several case studies showing how their platform is impacting different industries. For example, they worked with Microsoft, learned to organize their huge content library, improve their search function, and make the whole learning experience better for users.
Interesting. So helping companies like Microsoft get better at managing and sharing knowledge with their users.
Exactly. And they've also worked with the Big Four consultancy firm to break down information silos and help them make better decisions. This firm had the classic problem of info being scattered across different teams and platforms, which made it hard for employees to find what they needed.
That's a problem a lot of organizations face. Was Graphwise able to help?
Definitely. They implemented their platform and created a unified content stream that made information easily accessible and searchable across the entire company. The result was better knowledge sharing, less duplicated effort, and ultimately, better informed decisions.
Okay, I'm starting to see the big picture here. It's not just about AI, it's about making knowledge useful and accessible for everyone.
That's it. And they're working with some big names across many different industries. They have case studies with Takeda, a global pharmaceutical company, UBS, a big financial services firm, and even a top 10 car parts maker.
Wow.
Each one shows a different way to use their tech, from building a company-wide data fabric to streamlining drug approval processes.
Sounds incredibly versatile.
Oh, and there's one more case study I thought was particularly interesting.
Okay.
Novartis, another big pharma company, used Graphwise to build a smart Q&A system that can quickly find answers from a huge archive of old documents.
That sounds extremely useful, especially in an industry like drug development where there's so much information to process.
Absolutely saves time, improves accuracy, and ultimately it helps speed up innovation.
So far, we've been talking about their general platform. I'd really love to dive into their Microsoft 365 solution, something that could directly benefit our listeners.
That's a great idea. Let's take a look at how Graphwise is bringing AI-ready data to the world of Microsoft 365.
Yeah, let's see how they're helping us overcome information overload and unlock the real potential of those everyday tools we all use. We've been talking about Graphwise and their whole thing about making data AI-ready. But this isn't just some futuristic AI stuff, right?
No, not at all. They're focused on solving real-world problems for companies of all sizes. That's a key point, I think.
In the first part, we mentioned some really cool case studies that show how Graphwise is helping businesses actually get value from their data. So maybe we can dive into those a bit deeper.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's get specific about how Graphwise is making a difference for these organizations.
Sounds good to me.
Let's go back to that Big Four consultancy case study for a second. Imagine, okay, a company with thousands of employees, different departments, different locations, all creating tons of data in all sorts of formats.
Oh, yeah, that sounds familiar. Different teams, different tools, different ways of storing information. It's a recipe for silos and a whole lot of frustration.
Exactly, and that's exactly what this consultancy firm was struggling with. All this valuable knowledge was locked away in separate pockets, making it hard for people to work together and slowing down their decision-making. Think about all the wasted time and effort because everyone's working with fragmented information.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces are scattered all over the place. You might have all the pieces, but good luck putting it together quickly.
Perfect analogy. So Graphwise comes in with their solution, and they create what they call the unified content stream that breaks down those silos and connects employees with the right information when they need it. Their knowledge graph technology acts as this kind of central nervous system that links everything together and makes it easy to find.
So instead of everyone digging through emails and shared drives, they had this central hub where information was organized, contextualized, and easy to search. That had to be a huge improvement.
It was. The firm said they saw major improvements in how easily people could access content, how efficiently they could work together, and most importantly, how well they could make decisions. By connecting all those dots between different pieces of information, they got a much clearer understanding of their projects, clients, and the overall market.
Okay, so AI-ready data leads to real business results. It's not just fancy technology, it's about helping people work smarter and make better decisions.
Exactly. And on the topic of empowering people, let's switch gears for a minute to a totally different industry. We briefly talked about that top 10 car parts maker that was using Graphwise to handle a really complicated configuration process for their auto cables.
Right, right.
Think about all the different options and specs involved in designing and building these cables and all the compatibility issues they had to consider.
Oh, I bet. One wrong choice, and the cable could be completely useless or even dangerous.
Exactly. And this complexity was creating bottlenecks in their process for creating quotes and configuring orders, which meant things were slow and inefficient. They needed a solution that could simplify things without sacrificing accuracy.
So how did Graphwise help them navigate all those options and specifications? Did they use those knowledge graphs we talked about before?
They did. Think about it like this. The knowledge graph is a digital map of everything they need to know about these auto cables.
Okay.
It shows all the relationships and connections between components, materials, and specifications. It's basically a blueprint that guides you through the entire configuration process.
So instead of trying to remember everything or digging through piles of documents, engineers could just consult this digital map to make sure they're making the right choices.
Right, and with that knowledge graph in place, the car parts maker was able to implement an intelligent assistant that guided engineers through the configuration process. It gave real-time recommendations, flagged potential compatibility problems, and even automated some of the compatibility checks.
Wow, that's like having a virtual expert right there with you, making sure everything is correct and efficient. Did they see any actual improvements from this?
Oh, definitely. They said they saw a big decrease in errors and a much faster quoting process. That meant they could respond to customers quicker and with more confidence, leading to happier customers and a stronger position on the market.
Another great example of how knowledge graphs can really streamline complex processes and make businesses more efficient.
Absolutely. And it shows that this approach can be applied to lots of different industries, not just manufacturing.
True, true. So what about other examples?
Well, let's take the pharmaceutical industry. We mentioned Takeda, but let's look at Novartis, another big name in pharma.
Okay.
They had this problem that's pretty common in drug development, responding to a ton of questions from regulatory authorities.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a lot of work. And the stakes are high, right? You want to make sure your answers are accurate, especially when it comes to drug approvals and patient safety.
For sure. And for Novartis, the problem was that a lot of the questions they got were similar to ones they'd answered before, but maybe worded differently or asked in a slightly different context. This made it hard to reuse those old answers efficiently.
Right, so they were basically starting from scratch every time a similar question came up, even though they probably already had the answer somewhere. That sounds incredibly frustrating.
It was, and it increased the risk of giving inconsistent information, which could lead to delays or even rejections in the drug approval process. To fix this, Novartis turned to Graphwise to streamline their whole Q&A process.
Interesting. So how did Graphwise help them get all that knowledge organized and accessible? Did you create another knowledge graph?
You know it. They built a smart Q&A system powered by a knowledge graph that captured all their past answers, the reasoning behind them, and the context in which they were given. It's like a dynamic library of regulatory knowledge that's super easy to search.
Okay, so now their regulatory teams could just query the system and get the right answer, right? Much better than manually digging through old files.
Right. Novartis said they saw a big drop in the time it took to find answers and respond to inquiries. They were also able to use the knowledge graph to spot trends and patterns in the questions they were getting, which helped them get ahead of potential issues and streamline the drug approval process.
That's awesome. It really shows how AI-powered knowledge management can make a big difference in a highly regulated industry like that. It's about using tech to enhance human expertise, not replace it.
Exactly. And that's at the heart of Graphwise's approach. They want to build AI that makes humans better at their jobs, not replace them altogether.
Makes sense. So what about other industries? Any more cool examples?
Let's talk about UBS, a global financial services company. They were facing a classic IT problem, managing a really complex and constantly changing IT infrastructure. They didn't have a good view of their IT assets, so they had data accessibility problems and a lack of clear governance.
So like a big digital city with no map or GPS, it's easy to get lost when you don't know where things are or how they connect.
Perfect way to put it. And that lack of visibility was leading to slow insights, delays in decision-making, and ultimately higher infrastructure costs because they had systems that were redundant or outdated. This all became even worse during a merger when they had to integrate multiple IT systems.
Mergers are always a nightmare for IT. Trying to merge different IT environments is like trying to fit puzzle pieces from different puzzles together. Not going to work.
Tell me about it. But Graphwise came in, and UBS was finally able to get that holistic view of their IT assets, connecting the dots between all their systems, applications, and data sources.
So they used their knowledge graph tech to create a map of their entire IT landscape.
Yep, showing the relationships and connections between everything.
I bet their IT teams were relieved to finally see the big picture.
You bet they were. UBS said they were able to make quicker decisions and cut infrastructure costs because they had a much clearer understanding of their IT environment. They could optimize resources, eliminate redundancy, and make smarter investments.
That's really cool. So knowledge graphs can bring order to even the most chaotic IT environments. It's about giving IT professionals the information they need to do their jobs better.
It shows that this tech is so much bigger than just NI. It's about connecting data, knowledge, and human expertise to solve real problems and create a better work environment, more efficient, insightful, and productive.
Those case studies are so impressive. Graphwise is doing some really interesting work across all sorts of industries.
Absolutely. That's why this deep dive has been so cool, right? We're seeing cutting-edge tech, practical applications, and real business results.
Yeah, and it's not just for giant corporations with complex systems.
Right. Remember, Graphwise also has that Microsoft 365 solution we talked about.
Yes, they get that these problems, information overload, fragmented knowledge aren't just for big companies. They affect anyone who uses digital tools to get work done.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting for our listeners, right? Think about how you could apply these same ideas to your own work in Microsoft 365.
That's a good point. Finding files, understanding content. Graphwise could change how we work with information, but how do they actually do it? What are the key things that make their Microsoft 365 solution stand out?
Great question. Let's explore how they're changing the Microsoft 365 experience.
Okay, so we've been on this journey with Graphwise, seeing how they're making data AI ready, unlocking those insights, solving those big business problems.
Right, but let's bring it back down to earth now.
Yeah, let's focus on our listeners. We've seen the enterprise level, but how can this transform your experience, using Microsoft 365 every day?
That's the real question, right?
We all use Microsoft 365, and sometimes it can feel like, I don't know, a bit much. Files everywhere, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams. It's a bit of a mess sometimes.
You're not wrong, and that's exactly where Graphwise for Microsoft 365 comes in. Remember those information silos we talked about? Well, Graphwise wants to break those down by creating what they call unified content streams.
Unified content streams. Okay, that sounds interesting. So all your content, no matter where it actually lives in Microsoft 365, all flows together.
Exactly. Think of it like a bridge connecting all your Microsoft 365 apps. Instead of information being stuck in separate apps, it all becomes part of this connected knowledge system. You could search for something once, and the results would come from SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, you name it.
No more jumping between apps, trying to remember where you saved something. Everything's just there. I like it already.
And that's just the start. They're also using semantic search, which we touched on earlier.
Right.
It's not just about matching keywords. Graphwise actually tries to understand what you mean when you search.
Yeah, like that example with renewable energies. It wasn't just finding those words. It was understanding the whole concept and finding stuff like wind power or solar energy, too.
Precisely. So imagine searching for project proposals and Graphio's intelligently finding documents, emails, even meeting notes that are related to specific projects, all presented in a way that actually makes sense.
It's like having a super organized research assistant who knows what you need before you even ask.
Right?
But how does Graphwise get that level of understanding? Are they reading our minds or something?
Well, not mind reading, but they're using a combo of automated and expert-assisted tagging. They analyze your content and automatically add relevant keywords and concepts, making it super easy to search and categorize.
So let's say I'm working on a project about customer experience. Could Graphwise automatically tag all my files and emails with that phrase? And maybe even related stuff like customer satisfaction or user feedback.
Exactly. That means you can build this whole searchable knowledge base around any topic without having to tag everything yourself. Saves a ton of time.
This is pretty amazing stuff. We talked about collaboration earlier, too. How does Graphwise help with teamwork in Microsoft 365?
Okay, imagine you're working on a project and you need to find someone who's an expert on, let's say, data visualization.
Okay.
Instead of emailing everyone or scrolling through contact lists forever, you just ask Graphwise.
And it would find the right person based on their skills, their experience, maybe even what they've worked on before.
Yep, like a matchmaking service for experts within your company. And it can also recommend documents and conversations that those experts have been involved in, giving you some really useful context.
No more awkward introductions or cold emails. Everyone gets connected with the right knowledge at the right time.
That's the idea. And it's not just about finding the right people. It's also about understanding all the information that's already out there. Think about how much time we waste trying to figure out the context behind a decision, a project, or even just a client relationship.
Oh, I know it. It's like trying to solve a mystery with only half the clues.
Exactly. Graphwise gives you those missing clues by connecting the dots between all those pieces of information. So you're working on a proposal, and instantly you've got access to the client's history, past projects, who the key people are, even their communication style.
That would be a game changer. I'd be so much more prepared and confident.
That's the power of context, and Graphwise brings that to Microsoft 365, helping you make smarter decisions and build better relationships.
This is really impressive stuff, but I want to come back to something we talked about earlier. All this talk about AI also raises some concerns about accuracy, right? How does Graphwise handle that?
That's a great point, and it's something that makes them different. Do you remember those hallucinations we discussed, where AI generates information that sounds believable but is totally wrong?
Oh, yeah, that's a big worry, especially as AI becomes more and more part of our work.
Well, Graphwise tries to minimize that risk by grounding its AI in actual knowledge and logic. It's not just about spitting out text. It's about connecting information in a way that actually makes sense.
Right.
So when you're using Graphwise in Microsoft 365, you can be more confident that what you're seeing is based on real knowledge, not just some AI making things up.
That's a huge relief. It's about building trust in AI, making it more reliable. So it's not just AI-ready data, it's also human-ready AI.
That's it. And that's what makes this whole topic so fascinating. We're watching AI go from this futuristic idea to a real tool that can help us in our everyday work.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot of ground today exploring Graphwise and how they're changing how we use data and knowledge. The big takeaway for me is that AI isn't about replacing us, it's about helping us do more.
I agree. And if you're feeling overwhelmed by information, struggling to collaborate, or just curious about AI, I encourage you to check out Graphwise. Their website's a good place to start. Lots of resources and examples there.
And remember, it's not just about having data, it's about making that data work for you. Graphwise can help you do that, unlock the potential of your information, and change how you work in Microsoft 365.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Hope I found it useful and inspiring. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing those boundaries of what AI can do.
The future of work is about human creativity powered by intelligent tools. Graphwise is definitely leading the way, and we're excited to see what they do next.